After many years my family tried to get back into my life, but I can't forgive them. Part 1. I never thought I'd hear from them again. After all these years, after everything they put me through, I had finally built a life where their shadows couldn't reach me. But life has a way of dredging up old ghosts when you least expect it. It all started when I was 16. My parents had always been strict, but they prided themselves on being good people. The kind who went to church every Sunday, donated to charities, and pretended our family was perfect. That illusion shattered when I was falsely accused of something that would ruin my life forever. It was my younger cousin, Lisa, who made the accusation. She was 11 at the time, and I had always treated her like a little sister. My aunt and uncle would drop her off at our house often, sometimes for hours, sometimes overnight. I never minded. I liked having someone to talk to in a house where my own parents treated me more like a problem to be managed than a son. Then one day, she told her parents that I had hurt her. That I had done something unforgivable. I still remember the moment my mom and dad sat me down in the living room, their faces pale with shock, my mother trembling as she asked me, "Why would you do this to your own family?" I laughed at first. Not because it was funny, but because the accusation was so ridiculous, so out of nowhere, that I thought it had to be some kind of sick joke. But when I saw the look in their eyes, I knew. They believed her. I swore up and down that it wasn't true. I begged them to listen, to think logically. But my mother refused to even look at me, and my father just kept shaking his head. "It's out of our hands," he said coldly. "Your uncle is going to the police." I don't remember much of what happened after that. The next few weeks were a blur of interrogations, hearings, and sleepless nights. I was terrified. They wanted to charge me as an adult, and for a while, it looked like they would. The only thing that saved me was the fact that Lisa's story didn't add up. There were inconsistencies, contradictions. Eventually, after months of hell, the case fell apart. But my reputation didn't recover. My parents didn't either. Even though I was never convicted, even though I was legally innocent, they still looked at me differently. My mother flinched when I entered the room. My father spoke to me in clipped, emotionless sentences. And the rest of the family? They acted like I didn't exist. The day I turned 18, I packed a single bag and left. I had no destination, no real plan, just an overwhelming need to be anywhere but there. Years passed. I struggled at first, working odd jobs just to afford rent in a tiny apartment. But I was free. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without their judgment crushing me. I built a life for myself, found real friends who didn't see me as a stain on their reputation. And then, out of nowhere, my mother called. It had been 10 years since I last spoke to her. 10 years of silence, and suddenly she was leaving voicemail after voicemail. Apologies, desperate pleas to talk, to fix things. I ignored her. Then the letters came, long, emotional messages about how much they missed me, how they regretted everything. I threw them away. But they didn't stop. My father even showed up at my workplace once. I refused to see him, and after that, I changed jobs. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Because last week, my mother showed up at my apartment door. And this time, she wasn't alone.